Hi guys, so I'm making my second chess video that I'm uploading on YouTube, and it was from a recent tournament game I played about 2 weeks ago in February of 2013. So my opponent was rated 1930 and I was rated 1990 for this game. My opponent played e4, I played d6, d4, knight of 6 attacking this e4 pawn. White defends it with knight c3. I bring my knight from b8 to d7, preparing to push my pawn to e5 and getting space in the center. He brings his other knight into the game. I bring my pawn up too so my bishop can come out. This is called the Old Indian. If I fianchetto, it would be more like a King's Indian opening. Fianchettoing is when you move your pawn up one that's on the G file or B file, and then you bring your bishop into that square. So anyway, he brings his bishop to c4, eyeing this f7 square. Maybe he's going to hop his knight to g5 and try to get a fork on this f7 square. I play bishop e7. I'm getting ready to castle, and he does bring his knight into g5 here. Now this is the most aggressive move he can play. He has two pieces attacking this f7 square that only has a king defending it. So I chose to castle here. Now I have a rook and king both defending it. And now he took it.
Check.
Now when they take f7 here, I'm always hoping that when I recapture with rook takes f7, they're going to take me one more time with their knight. This would not be too good for white because he would be down a bishop and knight for rook and pawn. I know that's both worth 6 points, but the bishop and knight can do a lot more damage during the middle game than the rook that will be stuck in the corner, or this rook. So I'll basically have an extra bishop and knight to attack his king, and he won't have that. His real advantage will happen later in the game. So he did not do that, which is probably better for him. He played knight e6. Now knight e6 is a good move because my queen is forced to go to e8. I can't go to f8, and I'm not going to stay on d8 because the knight will just chop me off. So I move to e8, and then he takes c7. Now he's attacking both my rook and queen at the same time. So again, I have to move my queen, and now he takes my rook. So this may look bad. It may look like I'm down a rook and two pawns just for that bishop. So that is worth, he has a rook and two pawns. He took f7 and c7 and a rook. That's worth 7 points, and all I've taken is his light squared bishop. That's 3. But the thing is, this knight is stuck in the corner. It cannot escape to this b6 square or the c7 square. So I would usually think I was losing this, but because I've looked at this on computers after I've lost tons of blitz games in it, I knew at the tournament that if I just play b6, I'm going to win this knight back and have a better position. So he realizes he can't save the knight. Even if he pushes his a-pawn all the way down to a5, I still have time to take the knight. So he castles. I move my bishop to a6. Now my queen is attacking the knight. My bishop is attacking the rook. He can't save it all. One idea for him might have been to take b6, but I'm going to recapture with my queen, and I'm going to have a lot of pressure on these dark squares. Let's say these pawns get exchanged at some point. This f2 square is going to be weak because he's probably going to move his rook that's getting attacked right now. So his rook's going to come over here, and these dark squares are going to be really bad later. So he doesn't do that. He just moves his rook away immediately. I take his knight here. After I take his knight, he decided to do a ton of trades. He took the pawn. I could take with my knight, but my bishop will be stuck back here. I want my bishop to come to c5 maybe. So I just took back with the pawn to let my bishop get some room to breathe. And now he tried to trade again. Now I could move my bishop here immediately, which kind of attacks this f2 square. It's good. But then he has a lot of choices. Maybe he'll take f6 check. Maybe he'll bring his bishop to e3. He has choices here. I wanted to just kind of force the variations so I knew what was going to happen. It also is just simpler to take on d5. So after I thought he should take with his queen. I can't just
departed.
I can't just ignore this queen here and play like something like bishop b7 attacking it because I'll lose my knight on d7. You see that? So instead I was going to play queen c8. And then let's say he makes a move like c3 to defend this pawn. I'm going to play bishop b7. Now I'm attacking his queen. I'm rerouting my bishop towards his king side if I can ever get this pawn. And I'm just putting a lot of pressure on his center. So I thought this would be pretty good for me. Maybe I swing my knight to f6, my bishop to c5. Or maybe I just bring my knight to c5 and leave my bishop on e7 or move it to f6. Instead, he took with the pawn. And I attacked his pawn. The computer says this was a slight mistake. I should have just blockaded the pawn and then attacked it later. It's going to be hard for him to hold his pawns because let's say he's preparing c4 to defend it with b3 so he can get this long pawn chain. Well, let's say I attack the pawn again, and he defends it. Now I play b5, and suddenly I'm attacking a ton of his pawns. If he takes this, his pawn chain will crumble. If he defends it, I can just attack this pawn again. Maybe I play queen c8. Or maybe I play rook c7. And I hold my center and try to break up his queenside pawns. So that's what I would have done if I had maybe seen that I could win the pawn that way. But I focused for a more immediate sequence of events, I guess. I played bishop c4. I wanted a more forceful line. He has to play d6 if he wants to hold the pawn. And then I just drop my bishop back to f8. I'm going to move my rook up to f6 and take d6. And it's going to be really hard for him to stop that. I also had another threat which he was worried about. He was worried about my bishop coming back to d5, attacking this g2 square. When my bishop comes back to d5, not only does it attack this pawn, but it also blocks off his queen from guarding d6 along this d file. So he's going to have trouble with my bishop back to d5 attacking this square and my other bishop attacking this square. So he prevented that. If he plays f3 when my bishop comes back, I can't just take g2. So I just lift my rook up. I'm going to take this pawn. He brings his bishop into the game, attacking my rook. That's fine. I'll just take his pawn. Now his queen cannot come to e2.
Friend arrived.
Or d2. Or c1. So c1's his only move. And then I swing my rook into the game. So at this point, like I said at the beginning, it's better to have these minor pieces in the middle game than the rook and pawn. Because this rook on a1 isn't going to do anything for almost the whole game. It's just stuck there. And I'm going to reroute all my pieces towards this king side. That's been my plan for the past few moves. So rook g6, and I'm lining up this rook on his king. You see that? If his bishop moves, I'm going to have a lot of pressure against this king. So rook g6, it's guarded by the queen for now, but I'm going to try to change that. So after rook g6, he decided to get his king off the file. He doesn't want me to have threats of checkmate on this g2 square. I was actually threatening during this move, if he makes like a horrible move like a3, I'm going to play h6, and now when his bishop moves, I'm just going to play queen takes f3. I'm threatening to take this with my queen checkmate in 1. It can't take my queen because it's pinned. You see that? So he doesn't play a3, he plays king over to get off of the pin. Now, I don't just play h6 here, I play bishop d5. Now I'm threatening to take f3. After g takes, my queen will come in and take f3, check. After that happens,
Check.
his king will be really vulnerable in this position. He has no squares to run to, because my queen guards them all. So I might play h6 here. And the bishop can't move, and it's looking pretty bad for him. Let's say he attacks my queen.
Checkmate.
Let's checkmate. So he has to be very careful there. So he avoids that too. He brings his rook over to defend f3, this pawn. Well, I found a kind of cool move here that took me a little while to see. These games, by the way, were 2 hours for each side. And we weren't really in time pressure this game. I played e4. The idea being, if he takes it, my bishop takes, and suddenly the square is looking bad. He has to defend it. And now I make him move his bishop.
Check.
Check. And he's about to get checkmated. Let's say he takes it, that's what happens. If he doesn't take it and pushes past me, I just push again. And now this g2 square is weak. He moves his rook over. And now he has to move the bishop again.
Check.
And it's not looking good for him. So he does the other thing. He doesn't take it. He brings his queen in. Now by bringing his queen in, I can still keep attacking the pawn. It's just going to take an extra move. Bishop d6. I'm attacking his queen. He moves his queen back to e3. Now I take the pawn. He takes. I bring my knight to e5. I'm attacking the pawn multiple times. He's defending it multiple times, but one less time than I am. 1, 2, 3 versus 1, 2. So he needs to defend it again, and he's going to have a lot of trouble. If he plays king g2, he walks back into the pin, and I'm also just going to be able to... his queen is defending the pawn and the bishop, which is too much. It can't defend both those things. So he decides to bring his rook into the game now, finally. Which was kind of a mistake after check.
Check.
Now I'm forking his bishop and rook. He plays a desperate move, check. King f7. Now when he attacks my knight takes g5. He's down 2 pieces here. It's going to be pretty easy for me to just try to win his pawns, promote my pawn, and checkmate him. Or trade off rooks before all that. So he plays h4, attacking my knight. I slide my rook over to h6, pinning it. And he resigns here because he can't take it, he can't take the knight, and he can't defend the pawn. If he moves either of these places, my knight just will take him. So, that was the second video I've uploaded on YouTube. It is a game I just played in a tournament, and I hope you guys like it. Feel free to leave comments or just enjoy it, and hopefully I'll do some more of these later. So, thanks guys.